All right, welcome. Our plan for the day that we missed, which was Tuesday, was to finish chapter 5. And so I was hoping to get ahead that day, but we will just stick with finishing chapter 5, which is conflict styles. So it is the end of your week 2, chapter 5 PowerPoint. So it was what we actually started in week 2, even though we are now in week 3. So I'm at on my copy it's slide 36, but it's media richness theory, and that's where we're going to pick up. So as a leader, you need to communicate using the appropriate medium. You don't text an employee regarding how to improve their work performance by sending them a text. You don't call a company-wide meeting to say that the email system is down for an hour. You send a message somehow, but you don't need to gather everyone together. Both are inappropriate uses of communication. Making sure that you use the appropriate communication for the appropriate situation is very important. So what is the media richness theory? Media richness theory explains and predicts why certain types of media channels or media are effective or not effective in communication. It is central to healthcare leaders that they select appropriate communication. So whether it's face-to-face, telephone call, email, even putting a flyer up on the wall, they all can predict the likelihood of success of communication. This is one of my favorite sayings, is I just survived another meeting that should have been an email. Often if there's times when you're trying to have a meeting where you just are giving out information, that can be done in an email. I love our faculty meetings because we have great, lively conversation that is so much more important than anything we could get accomplished through an email. And so making sure that the meetings are for things where communication and two-way communication need to occur, and that you're not wasting other people's time. All right, media richness is based on 4 main factors, and it is 1, the potential for instant feedback. If you need the feedback, like I said, sometimes discussion is important. That makes it more rich. Verbal and nonverbal cues. So you need to be able to process what is occurring and people's reactions to it based on both their verbal and their nonverbal feedback. The use of natural language versus formal language. So think of, if you're sending an email to people in your group, and you started it out by saying, "Dear fellow Group 9 classmates," they may think that it's a more formal email. Instead of saying, "Hey group, let's get together," it may be a little less formal. And so the use of how you use your language is important. But be careful. We see this often. Fortunately, I don't see it in PT students as much as I see it in applicants or people, young people, text or emailing me, that they will use the letters UR for your and THX for thanks when they're emailing me as a faculty member of the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. So that email language was not appropriate for what they were trying to get through. And the last is it group, how many people are you focusing on? Is it a large group, a small group? Is there a mass of people? So realizing how many people you want to communicate with is important. Right. Things that make something a high in media richness, again, is the ability for feedback, the ability for timely correction of any uncertainty, and the ability to act on the communication quickly. So things with high media richness include face-to-face or one-on-one contact, or face-to-face group contact, or even a teleconference. And it can go down to something as low as a posted flyer or a very impersonal memorandum that would go out to everyone. Leaders should select media channels that reduce ambiguity. So you want certainty in your communication. Making sure that you're reducing any uncertainty is important. The more complex the issue, the more that the people you're talking to are going to want face-to-face communication. computer-mediated communication, so think of email, text, those kind of things. Those deal more with tasks, but less with the relationship. So it may increase polarization between the leader and the individuals you are talking to. So that computer-mediated communication does work, and at times it's needed, but it works best with very linear and structured tasks. If you have a checklist or you have a list of things you want individuals to do or to know, an email is appropriate. It's good for information processing, so getting information out there. People with technical skills do gain power with computer-mediated communication. If you're trying to communicate with someone who has poor technology skills, think of somebody who's maybe elderly or has lack of technological skills, that may not be a good way to communicate. And it's been shown that more cliques and coalitions form with emails than with face-to-face communication. So having that ability to talk to everyone or talk to individuals even helps with any polarization. Right, we talked about verbal and nonverbal communication within this unit before the podcast, and also with media richness. But listening is a very valuable leadership skill. If we're thinking of computer richness, it is difficult to use listening skills when you're using communication that has a low media richness. But listening, it contributes to a supporting and confirming communication environment. Listening is hearing, so not just receiving the messages sent, but being able to understand and analyze what the purpose of the speaker's message, and to empathize, to see what the message is from the viewpoint of the person speaking. Right. People who are seen as good leaders are also good listeners. So there's an effective listening model that you should begin to practice. If someone's communicating to you, you need to stop, make eye contact with them. So stop, look, and then listen to what they're saying. Ask questions. Good leaders ask more questions than just allowing an individual to talk, because you need to completely understand where they're coming from. It's a good idea to paraphrase the content so that to make sure that the intent of what the individual was saying is also what you received, and also to paraphrase feelings if that's appropriate, making sure that again what the individual is feeling is also what you are thinking that they're feeling. All right, what do you do when there's conflict? So conflict is a necessary part of any environment. Without constructive conflict, things may never change. Okay, health leaders will be met with situations of conflict and need to be able to master conflict management styles and techniques. Constructive conflict is good for health organizations, but it is managed best by those who've been trained in conflict management. Conflict occurs when independent people or even groups of people have different goals or aspirations than what the leader is hoping for. Realize that you will be working with highly educated people, and highly educated people have strong opinions, and they should. This can lead to conflict. It is with the individuals that you're working with who are highly trained, you need to listen to them. They may have different points of view. It is the easiest way to manage conflict is to see all points and everyone's side. Right, this is a chart that I like. If you start in the center and you think of the reasons for conflict, it could be people's preferences, different resources, different values, relationships, or perceptions. And all of these reasons have to do with people, with goals, and with leadership. The goals for an organization may not meet with the values of the employee. The relationships may be different. And so within each of those, you have to consider the goals of the organization, the leader's purpose, and the employee. Once you notice that there is tension, if you have great conflict management skills, this can be a constructive conflict. And so having discussions, opening lines of communication will help with conflict management. Constructive conflict, where everyone's point of view is found and the best solution is utilized, can lead to reaching goals. But destructive conflict, so when the conflict splits an organization, that leads to failure. What also can lead to failure if there's never conflict, because that can lead to what's called groupthink. One person says something, no one disagrees, and everyone goes along with it. So no conflict can lead to failure just as much as destructive conflict. You always want conflict to be constructive and managed well. All right, what are conflict styles? How can you manage conflict? There's 6 basic conflict management styles, and everyone has a dominant one, but most people use different conflict management styles in different situations. All 6 styles can be learned, applied, and mastered. So just because you have a dominant style doesn't mean that you can't learn to use the other styles. All right, so what are the 6 conflict styles? One is accommodating. This is when you have little or no opinion, or that someone else's opinion, when they're very strong, you view it as more important than yours, and you allow the organization to change based on the other person's opinion. The next is avoiding. This is often used when you feel the issue really isn't relevant or worth your time, and you feel that others can resolve the conflict more effectively, so you avoid it and allow other people to deal with it. The third is collaborating. This is when your objective is to learn from all sides and you want to incorporate other people's point of view. Competing. This is when quick action is needed, is often when unpopular actions need implementing. Something has to get done, a decision had to be made. It may not be a popular decision, but you need to make that decision and you need to make it happen against the competing goals of your employees. Compromising. This is usually to achieve a temporary settlement. It's a backup when collaborating or competing is unsuccessful. And problem solving. This requires identification of the broader problem. Both parties need to have a vested interest in the solution in order to come up with the best options. The basic styles are chosen based on each situation. So you may at times accommodate, where other times you have to collaborate or compromise. All right, remember when we were talking about leadership theories, and we talked about Ohio State and Michigan University's leadership theories? Well, this slide comes from a lot of the research they did. So when you have high cooperation, so on the bottom right, among all your employees, accommodation, collaboration, and problem solving usually work well. When you have low cooperation, avoiding and competing is often needed. Same thing with when you're talking about your concern for yourself. If you have low assertiveness, avoiding and accommodating is your probably go-to. But when you're highly assertive, you can have a competition-based conflict management style, problem solving, or collaboration. Or compromise tends to sit in the middle. So you are concerned for yourself and you're concerned with others. You're worried about cooperation, but also with being assertive. All right, there's some essential steps for healthcare leaders in conflict management. First, stay calm and rational. Find the facts. So in other words, do your homework. Get all the information possible. Understand the resource implications and limitations surrounding the conflict. So I think of this in a clinic. If PTs want to have 2 hours of documentation at the end of the day that's paid, does your facility bring in enough income to allow the employees to have 2 hours to do their documentation? I would think in most cases, no. And so understanding that the resources and limitations are not going to meet your employees' goals. Listen to how you feel and know what you want or what you need. There's a saying in the military when they talk about military resilience and dealing with conflict, especially when soldiers come back from a deployment, and it is know what you want, say what you want, get what you want. So unless you're willing to define your wants and needs, you may not get the outcome that you want. All right, additional steps for dealing with conflict management. Try to imagine what the other ones are feeling, what they're wanting, and what they need. Use a process to select a strategy, such as maybe a decision tree method. So write it out and have your employees and those you're working with help you with the decision tree. Rehearse your strategy and be prepared to modify your approach if necessary. All right, when you're in the midst of conflict, there's several things to keep in mind. Separate the people from the problem. Don't make it personal. Talk about what is occurring within the organization. Focus on interests, not positions. Avoid always having a bottom line. You don't want to sound like you're listing ultimatums. Think about the best and the worst solution, but know what you can live with. You may not be able to live with the worst solution. Generate several possibilities before deciding what to do. And insist that the resolution is based on an objective standard, and again, not on feelings or opinions. All right, that is all for this. We will have an assignment in the future related to conflict management and conflict resolution styles, but it will be for a later week. So for this week, there is a Reflective Journal 3. You'll have to watch a YouTube video and then discuss leadership. Thank you.